All right. Welcome to Surrounded by Sports, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Perkins, and today my guest is Dr. Kathy Reaves, who runs the College Transfer Report. How are you doing, Dr. Reaves?
I'm doing amazing. I hope you are.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Today, Dr. Reeves is going to help us understand the ever-changing landscape of college recruiting, the changes in priorities of the schools, and the changes in opportunities for young athletes. Recruiting, transferring, transfer portal, and the benefits of junior college and small schools are all on tap for today. That was a lot of words there. Dr. Reeves, I want to do this real quick because I want to kind of explain. First of all, thank you so much for coming on.
You're
Second of
welcome.
all, I want to explain why you, right? And why you is fairly obvious. Dr. Kathy Reeves holds a bachelor's degree in political science from North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina, a master's in education from Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a master's in business administration from Salem University in Salem, West Virginia, and a doctoral studies from Colorado Institute of Technology in Colorado Springs. You are probably easily the most educated person I've had on the show so far.
Oh, thank you. My
Um,
pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We've been working on this for a couple of years.
A couple of years now.
It seems like I didn't have a platform to do it, and I've always wanted to. And we got the opportunity to talk on the phone once,
Absolutely.
and I really enjoyed the conversation. You're so informative. Let's take a break, and then we're going to dive into the college report and so much more. How all these things are affecting children and
Sounds
everything.
great.
Okay.
That sounds
Awesome.
great.
Awesome.
All
Awesome.
right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Welcome back, Dr. Reeves. The college transfer report helps sophomores in junior college find four-year institutions that are
That's correct.
a good spot for them. It also helps freshmen find both four-year institutions and other junior college if they need to
Absolutely.
transfer.
Correct.
Um, Along with helping coaches, that's something you've added to the thing. You help coaches find placement as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a ever changing. It's ever changing. We well. So first, thank you for having me on the show. It's my pleasure to be here.
Hmm.
And I definitely want to say now the purpose of going to college is to get an education. Now, I would say that because, I was a former college professor, but the transfer portal has changed the trajectory of high school recruiting.
Yes.
Uh, and it's we're having a difficult time relaying this information to high school parents and the importance of being educated on the recruiting process as it pertains to transfer players, to transfer portals, and attending junior colleges, which is what we call JUCO.
Yeah.
JUCO is an abbreviation for 2-year colleges and universities, which we strongly encourage a lot of students that are seeking to play sports in college, and not just basketball, but all the sports across the board, to attend a junior college to see how that transition would play out,
Hmm.
and also to get some experience as a veteran player,
Hmm.
which is what a lot of college coaches are looking for now. See, the piece that a lot of parents don't understand is when a student athlete is presented to a coach, and a coach is presented to a student athlete, and this is what the college transfer report does. It brings those two entities together, and in doing so, there is a vetting process that goes, into the mix, because it's a recipe of things. It's not just, hey, I want a full ride. I want a full scholarship. I want a full this and a full that. And what I often tell parents is that the only full ride, and this is what I tell kids, the only full ride that you are going to get is, to the gas station in the passenger side with your parents. Because this money that you're requesting for full rides and things of that nature, that money belongs to that. The coaches have control as to who they want to bring on their team. You have to be able to make an impact because this is a results driven business. It's results driven. So coaches get fired if they're not if they don't produce results.
Hmm.
So with this being a results driven business, just because you're bouncing a basketball or you're passing a football or you're soccer or softball, any of these sports right now, it's just basketball. This is basketball, the ending of basketball season. So we mainly, focus on basketball recruiting at this point, football recruiting at this point.
Hmm.
But I explained to the parents that just because your child bounces a basketball does not put them in control.
Right.
You're
Right.
not in control because you bounce the basketball. That's
Hmm.
not what we're doing.
Right.
Your performance on the court, just like on a job. I mean, you gotta perform, you gotta produce. Even with what we do as a college transfer report, we have to be knowledgeable of number one, the recruiting process. We have to be knowledgeable of the NCAA rules. We have to be knowledgeable of the NAIA rules. So you have all these different divisions that we have to be knowledgeable for. So we're held accountable as well. So when I explain to these parents that a full scholarship is dependent upon how your child, what can they bring to this team to help us win a championship?
Right.
Because there's a difference between playing, do you want to play or do you want to win?
Right.
Right? It's two different things, two different mindsets.
Hmm.
What's going on right now and what we see on television with the SEC tournaments, the ACC tournament,
Hmm.
um, the Big East, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, those are high performing student athletes. They want to win. They
Right.
have a winning mentality. They're just not out here playing, just playing. So
Right.
that's not what they're doing. So
Right.
I explain to these parents now, you have to bring something to the table.
100%.
Now where that comes in, how do you bring something to the table?
Hmm.
How can you compete? How can your high school kids, we're talking about high school now, how can your high school child, compete with these D1 4-year transfer kids?
Right.
Well, the
Yeah.
answer is you can't. Right.
Hmm.
You can't compete with them. So
That's right.
with that being said, you're not in a position to demand that your child gets a full scholarship. If if I get a full scholarship, then we will consider
Hmm.
going to your college or university. Well, that power is no longer, it's not in your child's hands, it's not in your hands
Right.
because the transfer portal has changed the trajectory for high school recruiting.
Right. Well, for one thing, like I was listening to Rick Pitino was interviewed and he said something to the effect of, we're not taking, I think they had already taken maybe one or two freshmen. He said, we're not taking any more freshmen. We're not even looking at them. He said, because
Correct.
I'm
And
losing.
John Calipari said the same thing. They're not even recruiting high school kids.
Right. Right. Because but their point was, I'm losing seniors. I can't
Absolutely.
replace seniors with freshmen.
Correct.
And so they're
Correct.
going to go find. And then Cam Newton had on his pod, and I'm
Absolutely.
paraphrasing here because just I'm just paraphrasing here, but I believe what he was trying to say was, look, a high school kid now thinks many times, especially with the NIL, that
That's right.
I'm allowed to say, hey, you need to do this for me. And he said, a kid that's been in school is looking and going, how do I fit into your program? And that's what you're talking about. The difference isn't, and we're not talking about the high school All-American because that kid's always going to have his spot. The number one
Absolutely. We're not
two-way.
talking that those are the top 100. Yeah. No, we're not talking about the top 100
Right,
ESPN. We're not talking about Juju Watkins,
right. But we are
Madison
talking
Booker. Yes.
100%. But we are talking about guys that, 3 years ago were able to kind of do the same things that those top guys were able to do 4 years ago.
Correct.
Since the portal opened up and all that, that's all changed. And so people have to
Correct.
realize. Now, you said something to me years ago about having things on film so that you can get, because if you go to a junior college, if you go to a major college,
That's right.
except for the blowout games, you're not going to get on the field.
That's right.
And so then if you do decide you want to go somewhere, you're going to have to go down to prove yourself
Absolutely.
to get back up. So you
That's
want to talk
correct.
about that a bit?
Absolutely. So, um, what we're looking at now as far as filming, and this is the advantage of 4 year because they have what's called synergy. Now, are you familiar with synergy? They have a tool called synergy.
Go ahead.
So synergy is the tool that 4 year colleges use. They can see any kid that's at any college or university.
Mm,
Once they put in their name, all they gotta do is put in their name and the name of the school, and the synergy recording will come up. And what that shows is every clip, every time, everything that the kid that who is rostered, it shows everything you're doing. Your
hmm
facial expressions when they take you out,
Right.
your talk back when he or she pulls you to the side, it shows your disposition. My
hmm
kids are, Miss Reed, what do you call disposition? Your attitude tone, even when
hmm
you're not talking, your
Right.
body language, the way that you are projecting yourself, your conduct when you are communicating with the referees
hmm
after they call you for a violation
hmm
in an attempt to try to correct you. How do you take criticism?
hmm
How do you stand correction? There are some kids that just cannot stand, they can't stand correction. So you
hmm
try to correct them, they're going to have a rebuttal.
Mm,
So with synergy, there is no reason for any kid, you can't hide the fact that you either have stats in double digits over 10 points, for the season,
hmm
or you don't.
Right.
Can you run the floor?
hmm
They can see all of that.
Right.
So with these highlight clips, and that's exactly what it is, they're highlighting when you're doing things the correct way.
hmm
But of course, these highlight films do not show what you're not doing,
Right.
right? The
Right.
number of shots that you missed. You're only
Well,
showing the number of shots that you made, not the ones that you missed.
correct. Well, for one, right, the purpose of all this, because how many guys, the percentages are so small of people that get paid more than.
Absolutely.
So the real purpose of all this, right, is to teach people how to take direction, to teach
Correct.
people. And currently, if you want to be promoted to a better situation, you're not up against the best seniors in high school or the best transfers that are sophomores in junior college. You're up against every player in the country that might be thinking about going somewhere else. So
Correct.
now your attitude becomes so much more important because a coach doesn't have to deal with it anymore,
Doesn't have to.
right?
We don't, and they don't. And we don't.
Mm-mm. Well, you heard
And
the
we
Rick
and
Pitino speech, right, where he kind of went crazy in the locker room. We won't use
right.
all the profanity, but the gist of it was this isn't about basketball. It's about adversity and you not being able to handle adversity.
Correct.
And I
Correct.
can't have people in my program that can't handle adversity because adversity comes, whether it's off the court or on the court, right? And so,
Correct. Correct.
and this tool you're talking about allows, in some way, the way you're presenting it, it allows the coaches to evaluate, but it also kind of gives a kid a way of realizing, you know what I mean? The
That
attitude of a young player is more
mhm,
important now than it has ever been. And I don't know that
absolutely,
that
absolutely,
in some ways it's good that, everybody's wants to beat up the portal, right? And I understand, I think the worst words the worst thing I've ever heard anybody say is always this. We've always done it this way. If somebody says we've always done it that way, that's why we do it. No, no, let's figure out why we do it, and because it might need to change, right?
absolutely,
We can't avoid change. So let's, instead of wishing we were doing it like we used to, let's find out the positives and the negatives of the process we're in. And there are positives to people getting paid, but there's also, with in Spider-Man, it's with great power comes great responsibility, right? But with more money comes more responsibility. With more
absolutely.
competition comes a limited group you're into. Um, so what are some of the advantages of going to a smaller school or a junior college?
And I'm going to share that with you, but let me just piggyback a little bit about, I think you were talking about the NIL deals, the name,
Mhm.
image, and likeness. See, oftentimes an NIL is not always money. This is where the kids get it completely confused. um, a lot of high school kids now saying, "Oh, show me the money, show me the money." There is no money for you unless you are, again, like we were saying, in the top 100 of the ESPN. And oftentimes, a lot of those kids are not getting actual an NIL deal, name, image, and likeness, is not always money. Sometimes it could be a sneaker deal.
Hmm.
Sometimes you could go into an ice cream shop and eat all the ice cream you want, because of the
Right,
so it's not always about money. And this
right.
is where the misconception, this is where parents need to be educated, it's where kids need to be educated, because contrary to belief, I had a coach to tell me that the schools, have nothing to do with the NIL deals. Those are negotiated with alums,
Hmm.
and with people who sponsor those kids that pump that money into, and NIL for those kids who are top performing in the ESPN 100.
Right.
So
I have a friend that's son that has two sons that play college hockey. And I want to say that he told me what they basically got NIL wise was like protein shakes and
correct,
skates and things like that, which cool. They didn't wind up having to pay for those, which they would have under another situation. But it is
absolutely.
not the windfall of money that people act like it is.
Absolutely. And then no one ever sees the back end when those NIL deals fail to fall through.
Hmm.
And when the schools no longer, I mean, because college coaches, they do not have to play you because you have an NIL. If you're not performing to a certain standard, you will be benched. You will
Hmm.
be pulled out the game. You will be pulled off the field. You will
Hmm.
be pulled off the court.
Right.
There was an incident where I think a young man sued. They were suing the coaches. They sued the universities over NIL deals.
Hmm.
That's always a losing case, and then that's not you cannot sue the coach over an NIL deal.
Right.
They're not, responsible for You have to perform. It is performance based,
Right.
and that's just what it is. And so again, they get totally confused with the dollar signs and an NIL deal. As you said, it's not always about money.
Right.
Now, with smaller, we have, again, smaller schools. We have the Power Four, NCAA Division One. We have the lower mid major D1s, the smaller D1s.
Oh,
And I know
yep.
my lights went out. So, what is the difference between a smaller school? A smaller schools, you have that personal. It's a little bit more personal.
Hmm.
At bigger schools, huge institutions, you're more like your student ID number.
Right.
and just, as a college professor, there's like 100 kids in the class, and you call it, it's numbers, student ID number,
Right.
student number 102
Right. And you were a
756.
college professor, right?
Right.
And so you get that on a level that most people don't.
Absolutely.
Sure. Do I really hope that student 103 does well, and I
Right.
appreciate his participation? Yes, but
Absolutely.
there's two grad
No
assistants talking to him
personalization
more than me.
whatsoever. You put this out here, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the lecture that we have going on. These are the expectations. This is a
Hmm.
rubric. This is what I expect.
Hmm.
If it's anything outside of this rubric or these expectations, it will not be accepted.
Right.
Papers are limited to 5 pages. You must have to include the reference
Hmm.
and the title page. Now, if you give me a book, I tell my students it's going in the trash. I'm not reading it.
Right. Right.
So
Mhm.
smaller schools, depending on the personality of the kid, Division 1 schools, D2 schools, Division 3 schools, mainly kids who are at Division 3 schools are focusing more on education.
Right.
Playing a sport is just a hobby, just for something to do.
Right.
But Division 3 colleges and universities, those kids are focused on, they're not interested in going to any professional field of sports. They're there strictly for educational purposes and playing, a sport that's just extra.
Right.
Division 2, and also Division 3 schools do not offer, they don't offer sports scholarships. So there's no sports scholarships at Division 3.
Right. Which is
Division
why
two,
junior college is so wonderful, right? Because you can have a full
absolutely.
scholarship. Sometimes they even have room and board for you.
And, well, they do
Yeah.
now. 2-year schools, the Division 1, they're also divided into Division 1 and Division 2 and Division 3.
Mhm.
So junior colleges have a Division 1 level. They also have a Division 2 level, and they have a Division 3 level. On the Division 1 level, they can receive full tuition. They can receive books paid, meals paid, and also housing. So Division 1 junior colleges offer housing as part of a full scholarship to attend there.
Hmm.
Division 2 junior colleges include everything except for housing. So housing could possibly be an out-of-pocket expense, or perhaps a scholarship of some sort that the school may find. But it is packaged, uh, as a separate expense, whereas junior colleges for Division 1 is included.
Right.
And then Division 3 junior colleges
Mhm.
have neither. They only, you only receive Pell money. So, and oftentimes the level of competition for Division 3 is much like high school.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. That is actually great information for people to know. Let's take
Yes.
a quick break. Let's come back and we'll talk a little
Okay.
bit more about what you do. And
Okay.
then I think I want to talk a little bit about your path to how you got here too as
Okay. Sounds
well.
great.
All right.
That
Thank you.
sounds amazing. Okay.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back, and I am here with Dr. Reaves, Dr. Kathy Reaves. What is the coaching aspect of your business?
So the college coaches, the transfer report, the coaches aspect, they depend on me to, after they subscribe to the report, this college transfer report they subscribe to for transfer players.
Hmm.
They depend on my knowledge and expertise to make sure that the information, of course, that is on the report is accurate. Contact information, if any of that information is not there. So I also serve as a sounding board to, also provide, customer, we say customer service and vetting. We often call it the T. So they say, what is the history on this kid? Because contrary to belief, there's a lot of history behind transfer players. They have a lot of them have eligibility. I'm responsible for making sure that they have the proper eligibility. I have to vet these kids and provide that information to the coaches. And, just a gamut of information that they may or may not need. Where did this kid come from? Where were they before? What are the dynamics with the parents? When the coaches come to me and they say, tell me about this kid,
Mhm.
what does that really mean? What does that translate to? Well, that translates to several things. Number one, what is the background? Why are they transferring? That's one of the big questions. Why were they released? When we're talking about junior colleges, because junior colleges do not have a transfer portal. So
Mhm.
there's no transfer portal for junior colleges, and another division called the NAIA. So when those kids are released, there's no transfer portal for them to go into. So they're pretty much under the older regime of how you vet kids
Mhm.
back in the day. So I have to make sure that I know as much about this kid and the background that I possibly can to provide to the coaches to see if this kid can help them win a championship, number one, and number two, if they can fit into their program. And it's a lot of reference giving that goes on as well, because oftentimes, we will have these, Zoom meetings and we meet on these kids and things of that nature. And the coach may connect with the young lady or the young man, and they may say, hey, this kid, the attitude,
Mm.
that is often the attitude. If it's not the performance, which the stats are low, it's oftentimes the attitude.
Right. Right.
So that those are some of the services that we provide to the coaches, and with it being so many kids, so many transfer players across the nation, we service colleges and universities across the nation. And in Canada, we've got 3 Canadian schools that we also service. So it is very busy in our
Yeah.
in our in our backyard.
In an older show that you did, you sent it to me the other day and I watched it. You mentioned helping kids from overseas find
Yes,
scholarships. You do that as
yes,
well.
yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes,
And that seems like I mentioned that to your grasp is wide.
yes,
And I think that it's incredible to me because it feels like the la do you consider yourself a lifelong student?
yes,
I mean, obviously you spent a life in college, right? You went to
yes,
college, you taught at college and all that, but
yes.
also you start a business. What made you decide to go into this?
So my background is IT. I managed IT projects for banks and financial institutions for 10, 15 years.
Hmm.
And I got into sports because of my children.
Okay.
I have two that one played football,
Okay.
the other one was a basketball
Hmm.
student. Both of them were high performing kids in high school, all conference, all of those things. And so when all these Division 1 colleges and universities began to reach out to my son, it was at that time that I was introduced to the recruiting process, and that just because you get accepted, you have to get accepted in the school first
Hmm.
before any type of offer can take place. So my football son did not have the grades to get accepted to these Division I schools. They were courting me and having me to come and visit and look at their facilities and things like that. But my high school son had the talent, but he did not have the grades. So
Mm,
that's how we were introduced to the junior colleges at that time. But my background, I'm in IT, I'm a developer, but it's my background. So I participated and I taught as an adjunct professor for several reasons, to keep mainly abreast of the changing, IT software, the technologies and things of that nature. And, that's how I was able to learn about, the world of academia and all of the requirements that are needed for a kid to not only be able to play at a particular school, but to maintain this word called eligibility.
mm-hmm.
You have
Mm-hmm.
to be a qualifier. I found that out in 2010, 2011. And so that's how I began to help a lot of my son and his friends
Mm,
get, acclimated with the NCAA Eligibility Center
mm-hmm.
and also the NAIA Eligibility Center, and just educating kids at the that used to come over to the house, and the games. I would be supporting my son and telling them, hey, you guys got to get in the clearinghouse. This process is not all about these college coaches just coming to recruit you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and another thing, when all these coaches were coming to the school to visit my son, the first thing they asked was a transcript. So you have all these schools that come to the high school, these colleges, coaches that come to the high school, and they ask for the transcript. And so if the transcript is not favorable, they will just not respond to the kid. They would just leave. So all these college coaches were reaching out to me and telling me that they were coming to the high school, to meet my son, but none of them were calling me. That's when I realized that, where the qualifier, you have to be a
Mm-hmm.
qualifier. And
Right.
so this is why it was back then that junior colleges were so important, because they helped, any high school kid after, being in the 11th, 12th grade. It's too late to turn around all those F's that you made in the ninth grade that followed you all the way to the 10th,
Right.
11th, and 12th.
Right. I went to junior college my first year with a kid that he was a fantastic player. He was incredible, but he had first gone to Alabama, and then he
Okay.
wound up at George Wallace where I was.
Right.
And I asked him, I was like, why would you leave Alabama? He said it was too much. He
Okay.
said he
Yeah.
said my guess was he felt like he didn't have the uh the background and education to just be in a room with 200 people and
Absolutely.
keep up. And so he came back to Wallace in order to get that baseline so that either he could go pro. I think he wound up going pro anyway, but he could have, after that junior college experience, he could have gone back to Alabama and been able to do both the classroom, because regardless of whether or not you walk in the front door, that doesn't mean you make the grades to stay.
Correct.
You have
Correct.
to have a baseline of maybe not knowledge, but at least how to look things up, find things and study.
Correct.
You have to have the motivation to do such. You
Correct.
have to be able to be organized enough to do that while you're going to school,
Correct. Correct.
and we haven't even got to playing sports.
Correct.
It's a lot. So getting that extra year or two to mature in all those
Correct.
aspects can be helpful to a person.
And it definitely does. And it also it can determine whether or not going to a 4-year school is really for you. Because we do have a lot of kids that hang up a jersey after the junior college, after the 2 years, they don't want to play anymore. They just want to be a regular student.
Right.
That happens a lot.
Right. But now you go to school, you get these degrees,
Uh-huh.
and then you pivot into this different, you see a need and
Yes.
you think, I can fit this need.
Yes.
You do that, and then
Yes.
it does well, and then all of a sudden the landscape changes with NIL and transfer portal,
Yes.
and so you have to pivot further.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I do. And I really got into the transfer reporting when I realized that there was a limited amount of, exposure for women's basketball. Everything was tailored to the men. And I was
Hmm.
looking in the portal and I said, nobody is putting these girls out here. No, all and even now with
Hmm.
the D2 transfer portal, they're made basically reporting on the men when they say, oh, there are 1,000 kids in the transfer portal. They're talking about the men's basketball. So
Hmm.
that's really how I got into women's basketball because I started off with football because that's I was doing football recruiting
Because you
first.
sons.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I didn't have any girls basketball players in the house because my other son played men's basketball, so he went to U Pike. He
Right.
played for Coach Kelly Wells, and did an amazing job. There's some awesome folks at U Pike, and I didn't even see this happening.
Hmm.
It kind of fell in my lap and it just
Right.
kept getting bigger.
Right. Which
And
is,
it just kept getting bigger.
but that's a due diligence thing, right? If you continue to do your due diligence,
Right.
many times things progress in the way you'd
They
like them
do.
to,
Yeah.
even.
Consistency. Yeah. I just
Right.
kept going. Yeah.
Right. That's what Chris Paul says, just stack days.
Yeah.
If you're not great at something, that's okay. Just keep stacking days that you're trying
Yeah.
it.
That's it.
It'll help. Now,
Absolutely.
I just think it's fascinating that you've been able to do this. I appreciate you coming on the show so
Well,
much.
I'm loving it. Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Now, to wrap it up, d the business degree, because I'm a big guy on
Hmm.
everything you did leads you to what you do.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And the business degree, and then the teaching, and then you go
Hmm.
into the banking. I think I have that order correct.
You do.
And that makes you learn the kind of nuts and bolts of the way the computer things change, and also just things change in general. Do you feel like you were oddly, by doing all of these things, it oddly made you uniquely qualified to do exactly what you're doing now?
Absolutely. 100%. And I'm gonna say because what all those areas have in common is building relationships and customer service.
Right. Isn't everything building relationships?
Building relationships
Mm-hmm.
and customer service.
Right.
Having that knowledge and expertise, learning how to write when I was, before I was a developer, I was a technical writer
Mm.
for IBM in Research Triangle Park, which is in Durham, North Carolina, and that's where I began to write. Moving on to being a business analyst, where we analyze systems. We have to write the requirements, the business requirements of how this system is going to run and how it's going to behave. That information has to be written down.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave me writing experience and how to articulate on paper, coupled with, of course, moving into IT project management, having to manage, people, which, that's, I really would want to just be a BA, business
Right.
analyst, but,
Yeah.
they saw the skill and the need for me to go higher. So
Mm-hmm.
having to manage people in all these systems, and not only that, having to know how to do everybody's job on your team so that
Mm-hmm.
you can be able to understand, how these systems work together.
Right.
So it all is, it's a recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And even the coaches today, they say, well, how did you learn all of this? I says, well, consistency. You have to, be consistent and diligent in what it is that you're doing. And, keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. Like Chris Paul said, you got to stack eggs. Got
Stack,
to keep
stack your
going.
days. Stack your days.
Consistency is the key.
Right.
But building relationships, relationship building. This is a relationship building business,
Right,
customer service.
right, right. And you know what? Let's just wrap on that, man. Thank you so, so much,
You're
Dr. Reed.
welcome very much. I
Appreciate
appreciate
you.
it.
All right,
Appreciate you more.
folks, thank you so much for watching this show, Surrounded by Sports. And we will be continuing to bring in content at least bi-weekly, hopefully more than that. Thank you so much and have a great day.